consumers to be protected against marketing of goods which are injurious to health and life. And the consumers need to be assured that manufacturers of consumer products undertake extensive safety and performance testing before selling these goods in the market. For that purpose, further safeguards are required, like any item which is sold must be properly labeled. And on the label, proper and complete information as to the contents, use, precautions, warning signs must be there. And then we talk about the third right, that is right to information. See, otherwise also, freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1)(a) includes this right to information. And now we have the Right to Information Act of 2005 also. Now, what kind of right is this in relation to the consumers? This is to be protected against dishonest or misleading advertisements, labeling, and whatever facts and information the consumer needs, that must be provided to the consumer. And this may be relating to the product, its utility, and like we can take the example, suppose I go to the market to buy some cosmetic. I have a right to know which brand it is, what are the contents in that, because I may like to have only organic material. And at the same time, I would like that there must be the warning or caution should be there that this can cause these allergies. And if it suits me, only then I should go in for buying such a good. Now, this right to be informed, because we generally talk about this right to information as part of good governance, and it has some kind of institutional or political touch. But we can talk about this as a fundamental right, having fundamental economic interest of the consumer also. In fact, the consumer must be assisted so that he can make wise decisions before buying any goods or before availing any services. And many a time, like we can take the example, many a time with just a change in the spelling, some companies there, and while we have a good brand, and just taking away one alphabet and changing the spelling, and this is sufficient to mislead the consumer. And fourth right, universally, is the right to choose. It's my right to choose any product or any service, and that too at competitive prices. And for that purpose, the consumer wants that there should be a wide array of goods and services available with diverse brands, diverse sizes, diverse colors, diverse qualities, so that the consumer has a right to select, a right to make a choice. And fifth right is a right to representation. This right to representation is also known as a right to be heard. In fact, why I'm talking about this right? Once, as law students, we are well aware of the principles of natural justice. Because once we consider this consumer right as a human right, and if it is violated, then of course, both the parties have a right to be heard. Now, but here we take it little differently. This is the right to express consumer interest in the making and execution of government policies that will have impact on supply of goods and services to consumers. And the consumers expect that the legislatures would propose laws that would ensure that consumers would have the chance to have a better life by getting the best value for their hard-earned money. And they have a right to fair consideration, their representation, when any such laws are framed. Now, all these laws, all these rights just become redundant if there is no right to redress. Now, this is the right of consumers to be compensated for misrepresentation. Now, here, in fact, what I feel is we need to use those principles of sustainable development when we talk about the polluter pays principle, that if the harm is caused, then the person who causes the harm or injury must make it good. And at the same time, precautionary principle, what we are talking about, that certain rights which have to be recognized. And but we have in India, we have such a large population, and the majority of population, especially those living below poverty line, or the daily wages we can refer to, labor class, they are concerned with 2 square meals a day. They are not concerned with their rights, and they will accept whatever it is. So it is very, very important that to take it as a right to consumer education. Now, this right is right to acquire the knowledge and skills which are necessary to be an informed consumer. Now, there's a trend to use this term when you say informed consent. Now we say informed consumer. And the consumer may look towards different sectors of society. It may be business sector, where the goods are being manufactured, government sectors, where the control mechanism is there, and the consumer himself. There are 3 words. No, the consumer needs to be informed. Why the consumer needs to be informed? Because we have to create a kind of value system where we have all the components of this consumer education. It's not only that the consumer must be aware of this, even the business world must be aware of this. Even the government, legislators, all the 3 organs of the state must be aware of this, because whenever any occasion arises where the dispute is there and the dispute is to be handled, tackled, decided, then this value base must play a great role. And we can also talk about the concern of which is because we find a chain among different rights. Now here we can find a chain between the consumer rights and a healthy environment. Now, the consumer also must have a right and work in an environment which is neither threatening nor dangerous, and which permits a life of dignity and well-being. Now, this is what I said a few minutes back, that nowadays we have right to well-being, and Supreme Court, while interpreting the term right to life, has categorically said in number of cases that it includes right to live with human dignity. And when we are referring to even consumer rights, we can talk about the dignity of the consumers. So ultimately, all the natural resources are to be used by the consumers. That is why I'm referring to this kind of right which must be there, that is a healthy environment. So we need to protect the environment. So you can in fact just analyze this, that our needs, now we have a food cycle, always a food cycle. Now for that purpose, what is required? There must be healthy forests, there must be healthy wildlife, land depletion should not be there, so that we don't have any issue with the farming or damaged crops. Number of such issues are there which directly or indirectly deal with the consumer rights. Now, coming to the rights of the consumers under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. But before that, I will just talk about the definition of consumer under Section 2, subsection 7. It says consumer means any person who, one, buys any goods for consideration. Little liberalization is there, which has been paid or promised or partly paid and partly promised, or under any system of deferred payment, and includes any user of such goods other than the person who has bought or paid, partially paid, promised to pay everything. But it does not cover those who have purchased this for commercial purposes. Similarly, when we talk about the services, it says hires or avails of any service for consideration which has been paid or promised or partly paid and partly promised, or under any system of deferred payment, includes any beneficiary of such service other than the person who has hired or availed of the services for consideration. But again, it does not include a person who avails of such service for commercial purpose. Now, explanation to this makes clear what is commercial purpose. Says the expression commercial purpose does not include use by a person of goods bought and used by him exclusively for the purpose of earning his livelihood by means of self-employment. And the expression buys any goods and hires or avails any service includes offline or online transaction through electronic means, teleshopping or direct selling or multi-level marketing. Because this is the need of the day with the advanced technology, and because, as I said just in the beginning, that we are becoming more used to, instead of I say it's a fashion, it was a fashion. I won't say it's a fashion. We have become more used to, and because of COVID-19 situation, this is utility also that we do shopping, etc. online. Now, under the Act, consumer rights includes, number one, a right to be protected against the marketing of goods, products, or services which are hazardous to life and property. Now, earlier also we had so many laws like Food Adulteration Act when we talk about food only. Then right to be informed about the quality, quantity, potency, purity, standard, and price of goods, products, or services as the case may be, so as to protect the consumer against unfair trade practice. I just refer to it, that the greed we have, why we look towards pariah an and pariah dhan. Then third, the right to be assured, wherever possible, access to a variety of goods, products, or services at competitive prices. Next, the right to be heard and to be assured that consumers' interests will receive due consideration at appropriate fora. Right to seek redressal against unfair trade practice or restrictive trade practices or unscrupulous exploitation of consumers. And finally, right to consumer awareness. Now, when this Consumer Protection Act 2019 came into force, it overhauled the administration and settlement of consumer disputes in India. It provides strong strict penalties, including jail terms for adulteration, for misleading advertisements. Even rules are there for when the sale is through e-commerce. An aggrieved consumer can file complaints about a defect in goods or deficiency in services from where he or she lives instead of place of business or residence. And fees is not required when the claim is within rupees 5 lakhs. Consumer can fight her own case in these forums. It can be done through video conferencing also, and it is not necessary to engage a lawyer. Then a concept of product liability has also been introduced by the new law, and aggrieved consumers are allowed to claim significant compensation as a relief due to the negligence of the manufacturer or service provider. And another in fact, a very important change is that a group of aggrieved consumers, they can join hands and file a class action. I think just recently there was in 21, this Supreme Court decision was there where, in fact, all those who had paid for some land, etc., they were allowed to file a combined suit. As I just talked about, misleading advertisements, which especially allure the youngsters, the children with the tender minds who can be easily attracted, exposed, and uh, taken away by these advertisements. Now, if the advertisements are misleading, then punishment can be awarded. Now, many times what happens, why we want to buy the goods, because the celebrities, they are in the advertisement, and then we think these are the role models, and whatever they are buying must be the best. So, in fact, here, celebrities who endorse a product may not be punished, and they should not be punished, but they can be barred from endorsing if the advertisement is misleading. And then, a very important need for regulating the e-commerce also. And for that purpose, certain disclosures have to be made, like relevant product information, including place of origin, maybe another country of origin, responding to the grievances of consumers while prescribing the timelines. Then there's also provision for settlement of consumer disputes through mediation. Now we have entered into a new world when we talk about administration of justice. It's not merely litigation or adversarial system. We talk about alternative dispute resolution mechanisms also. And this is the need of the time that it is incorporated. And apart from this, I have already talked about number of rights. So now here, in fact, under the Act, the boards of corporates, the manufacturers, trade consumer goods, they must create a consumer affairs committee to periodically review consumer complaints, address the need. Then we have all the hierarchy of the consumer forums. Central council is there. And in fact, our rights, to whatever degree we may recognize, these just become redundant if you don't have the remedies. So this is provided. Now, I have been talking about the rights only, not duties. Even when we talk about rights, we can refer to many other laws also, like law of contract, the sale of goods. Everywhere we find that warranties, guarantees, conditions, that these have to be complied with. I'm not going into the details. But why we forget, there is one principle when we refer to sale of goods: buyer beware. So that means consumer has to be beware. And the slogan, Jago Grahak Jago. So we have to think of our duties. Now, certain duties may be such where we can't have legal, because in case of duties, generally we don't have legal sanction, even though recently the Supreme Court is thinking of enforcing even the fundamental duties. But we can't impose. We can't say that you have to be loyal, you have to be honest, should not be greedy. But I'll just talk about one thing only, which all of us understand, that we cannot enjoy our rights unless and until we perform our duties. One of the fundamental duties, which I think is the most important, that is strive towards excellence. I leave the blank. This excellence is required in every kind of dealing. So that is why I started with the Vedic lessons, that what we should do and what we should not do. So all kinds of duties. Now, because it's that if I am a consumer, at the same time, I may be a manufacturer, I may be a seller, I may be an advertiser. So all these roles need to be balanced. Many a time you must have watched in the films the doctors selling organs. And suddenly one day he finds, or selling the companies, this pharmaceutical companies selling spurious drugs. And one day suddenly the owner finds his son also died because he also consumed the same drugs. So we must always, whatever our status is, position is, role is, we must step into the shoes of others with whom we are dealing. Now here I can talk about the consumers, and if all of us perform our duties well, keeping the only litmus test of value, I think consumer rights, what to talk about consumer rights, all the rights are protected. And I can share, and many of you know also that I'm a poet by heart. So I'll just conclude with my poem. उठ भवभूति के प्यारे ग्राहक जाग. Bhavbhuti, you understand, who loves materialistic things. उठ भवभूति के प्यारे ग्राहक जाग, अपने अधिकारों के प्रति जाग. तुम उपभोक्ता हो, भक्षक या भिक्षुक नहीं. तुम उपभोक्ता हो, भक्षक या भिक्षुक नहीं, शायद शिकार होने के भी इच्छुक नहीं. भोग विलास चाहे तुम्हारा हक ना हो, भोग विलास चाहे तुम्हारा हक ना हो, बुनियादी जरूरतों पे किसी को शक ना हो. जब खरीदार बन जाते हो बाजार में, जब खरीदार बन जाते हो बाजार में, हक बनता है जानो घुस के वस्तुओं के किरदार में. हक बन जाता है जानो घुस के वस्तुओं के किरदार में. क्यों जुर्रत हो किसी की, क्यों जुर्रत हो किसी की झूठे विज्ञापनों से बहका दे. क्यों जुर्रत हो किसी की झूठे विज्ञापनों से बहका दे. कैसे कोई तुम्हारी पसंद और जरूरतों को भटका दे. मुझे चाहिए एक शक्तिशाली मंच, मुझे चाहिए एक शक्तिशाली मंच, जहां पेश कर सकूं मैं अपना रंज, जहां पेश कर सकूं मैं अपना रंज. कानून का फसाना तो सुहाना है, कानून का फसाना तो सुहाना है. मुझे स्वयं सावधान रह स्वयं को बचाना है, मुझे स्वयं सावधान रह स्वयं को बचाना है. एंड फाइनली, उठ बाजार अर्थव्यवस्था के स्तंभ ग्राहक जाग. उठ बाजार, मार्केट इकोनॉमी, उठ बाजार अर्थव्यवस्था के स्तंभ ग्राहक जाग. अपने कर्तव्यों का भी गाले मीठा सा कोई राग, अपने कर्तव्यों का भी गाले मीठा सा कोई राग. थैंक यू. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Mesmerizing. And this poem of yours, that is the gist of your entire lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ji. Thank you. I am not expert on consumer law. Preeti invited me.
But this is the beauty of correlation of the things which we know with the subject.
Ma'am, you have very vast experience of teaching and research. So no topic is alien to you. You can talk on any topic, ma'am.
Thank you, dear.
So before I invite our faculty member Ajay Singh Kushwaha ji for the formal vote of thanks, I would personally like to thank Professor Nishtha Jaswal ji, Honorable Vice-Chancellor from the Himachal Pradesh National University, Shimla, on behalf of the university, on behalf of the Department of Human Rights, and on behalf of the organizing committee, because in a very short lecture, ma'am has talked about various rights of consumers as well as about the duties, because we all know that no right can be absolute. Whenever we talk about rights, there will be duties also. And ma'am has talked about the rights of safety, rights of information, right to choice, right to be heard. And we all know that this consumer education is also very, very important right, so far as we talk about the rights in general. So consumers need to be very, very aware about the rights, as well as they must be feeling responsible about their duties also, because we all know that the concept of green consumer is there. which is nothing but the duties of the consumer. So we need to consume the things, but we should also know how to dispose of the thing. So ma'am has, in a very short lecture, has not only talked about the rights, but also about the duties of the consumer. So I personally, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you, ma'am, for gracing this occasion with your beautiful words which comprised of there's nothing but the consumer rights also. So you have the beauty of writing the poems also involving the current issues and the things. So now I formally invite our assistant professor, Dr. Ajay Singh Kushwaha ji, for the formal vote of thanks. Over to Ajay, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम। मैडम ने जैसे बहुत वो कहा, यूं तो सरे बाजार बिकने को आते है हर एक चीज, तुमने मुझे खरीद कर अनमोल कर दिया।
क्या बात है।
15 मार्च विश्व उपभोक्ता दिवस के अवसर पर आयोजित ऑनलाइन व्याख्यान उपभोक्ता के अधिकार और कर्तव्य के विषय पर किसी भी राष्ट्र की अर्थव्यवस्था उसके उपभोक्ता के
म्यूट हो गया अजय जी।
आभार की इस बेला में हम सर्वप्रथम आभारी हैं इस व्याख्यान के मुख्य संरक्षक माननीय कुलपति महोदय आदरणीय आचार्य संजय सिंह सर के। सर अत्यधिक कार्य की व्यवस्था के कारण हम लोगों के बीच उपस्थित नहीं है। सर आपकी स्वीकृति के बिना यह आयोजन संभव नहीं था। आपका बहुत बहुत आभार सर। सर्वे भवन्ति सुखिनः के ध्येय वाक्य के साथ अपने व्याख्यान को प्रारंभ करते हुए आपने यह दिखा दिया मैम कि किसी भी व्याख्यान की सफलता एवं उसके विषय की महत्व उसके विद्वान वक्ता के सारगर्भित वक्तव्य से होती है। इसी कड़ी में हम आभारी हैं ऐसी महान विभूति माननीय कुलपति महोदया आदरणीय आचार्य निष्ठा जायसवाल मैम के। माननीय कुलपति हिमाचल प्रदेश राष्ट्रीय विधि विश्वविद्यालय शिमला। मैम आपका यह व्याख्यान निश्चित ही हमारे विद्यार्थियों के लिए शैक्षणिक जीवन में अत्यंत महत्वपूर्ण रहेगा। आदरणीय आपका बहुत बहुत आभार। हम आभारी हैं इस व्याख्यान के आयोजक आदरणीय आचार्य प्रीति मिश्रा मैम के, संकाय एवं विभाग अध्यक्ष मानवाधिकार विधि अध्ययन विद्यापीठ बाबा साहब भीमराव अंबेडकर विश्वविद्यालय लखनऊ। हम आभारी हैं हमारे विभाग की वरिष्ठ आचार्य आदरणीय प्रीति सक्सेना मैम के, निर्देशक CPJLS बाबा साहब भीमराव अंबेडकर यूनिवर्सिटी लखनऊ। मैम आपके विषय पर पकड़ और आपका ज्ञान हमारे विभाग की निश्चित जमा पूंजी है। हम आभारी हैं हमारे विभाग के वरिष्ठ आचार्य शशि कुमार सर के। हम आभारी हैं हमारे विभाग की सहायक आचार्य राशिदा मैडम के। हम आभारी हैं हमारे विभाग के सहायक आचार्य राजसेठ सेंकल सर के। एवं हम आभारी हैं हम हमारे विभाग परिवार के सदस्य डॉक्टर विजय भास्कर सर के। इसी कड़ी में हम आभारी हैं कार्यालय के सहायक कामरुद्दीन जी, सदगुरु जी, अतीक जी के। एवं इस व्याख्यान के सफल बनाने में प्रत्यक्ष अप्रत्यक्ष रूप से अपना सहयोग देने वाले प्रत्येक व्यक्ति का। अतः अंत में इस व्याख्यान के समाप्ति की घोषणा में आदरणीय संकाय एवं विभाग अध्यक्ष महोदया की अनुमति से इसे समाप्ति की घोषणा करता हूँ। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Ajay ji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for coming here.
चलो, hopefully हम जल्दी वैसे मिलेंगे।
बिल्कुल, sure ma'am. Face to face personally.
Okay जी, नमस्कार।
Thank you ma'am. Namaskar.
नमस्कार।
Okay. I thank you all.